What's up, everybody? Been a minute. It has been a minute. Yeah, I took off last week because got the laundry piling up in the back. That's how busy we've been. But I'm ecstatic to be back. Had honestly just a phenomenal weekend in Vegas. Had just a great time at the event, hanging out with everybody. Um, The set was phenomenal. Just got nothing but great things to say. Took off this past week, the Wednesday directly after, because I was beat when you're playing Nats and staying up till 3 in the morning playing poker in between. It's pretty exhausting. So to be honest, if I'm being 100% honest, I needed to catch up on some sleep. So that's exactly what we did. And what's up? Good to see you. Good to see you. So we have a decent amount to kind of talk about um in regards to kind of what happened. Obviously the weekend performance wise was not good, and I thought to myself, I said, well, we got two options, because in the process of it not going really well, I learned a ton of things, both that kind of rewrote some old thoughts, some old processes, and you know, kind of shifted my mindset a little bit. And so I had two options. I can either kind of, run away from the performance, kind of hide it, kind of just not put a focus on it, or I could scream from the rooftops about how bad it was and how much I learned, and provide that to you. So that way, hopefully, you don't make the same mistake. And I went with that option. I went with the latter in that situation. And so I want to spend a very little amount of time just recapping the weekend, just, kind of, explaining how good it was as far as everybody and just all of that stuff. Just want to do a very quick recap, nothing crazy. Then I want to literally walk through my very limited testing window and decisions that I made and how they impacted the tournament. Because it's very easy to look at a single sample size. I was playing gravy for US Nats. And so it's very easy to look at a sample size and be like, oh, I got some bad matchups. And I did. I ran into Prism, I ran into a Ninja, I ran into just a Slippy. I mean, like there were some rough matchups, but at the same time, I think a lot of those were winnable. If I had done things a little bit different. And so that's what I want to share. That's what I want to discuss. And more importantly, like I kind of hinted to a little bit earlier, there's a lot of things that I knew about in the game of Flesh and Blood, but I didn't apply the proper weight. I didn't value it high enough. And I think the game is changing. Probably for the better, to be honest. If we're being 100% honest, probably for the better. And I want to discuss it. I want to talk about exactly what it is and how it's kind of shaping the game, and how I think if you're this stream specifically, the topic that I'm going to mention is going to really kind of, you're one of those older players that's been in the game for a long time, I think you'll get a lot from this. And also, if you're a newer player, so you don't waste time dabbling in what I'm going to mention, I think you get a lot of value out of it. So let me just start with a very quick recap, 5 minutes. Nothing crazy. We're not going to go every single matchup or anything like that. I'm just going to say I flew in to Vegas, I think, as early as Wednesday. Has basically spent the better part of Wednesday and Thursday playing poker and drafting. Had a blast. Got to see everybody coming in. We had some good food. It was all good vibes, right? And we knew we were locked into gravy. And Shout out to Emma for literally lending me the cards to play the deck. It literally would have not even been an option from a card accessibility situation, because to make matters worse, right? We knew we were scrambling for cards. We knew that Hamal was going to kind of somewhat save the day by delivering hundreds of play sets to players. And then of course all the vendors, Righteous Gaming was there handing out stuff. You had Min Max out there handing the stuff out, just supplying the play. We could not get into the venue the day before Nats. Star City Games or whoever was doing all the tournament stuff, they were like, nope, can't come in. So that all the vendors literally just lined up tables outside the door and started giving people their shit. It was wild. There was a second there where I was like, you know what? I might just be playing poker all weekend because I literally am not going to be able to have cards to play the tournament. Luckily, that did not happen, and so I was very fortunate in that regard. So I got the cards that I was needing, and we played Nats. Basically, what happened was round one, I got paired into Dan Rakowski from the Runaways, phenomenal player. And it's always a blast playing Dan. We always have quite a few laughs at the table, at least. And, it was funny because the last time I'd actually played Dan was the last round of the very first U.S. Nationals, where we were kind of on that. We were at the top tables, but we knew that either one of us that won were going to bubble out. He beat me that time, and I think he got like 11th, and I lost and got 20th. So we both bubbled out, but we kind of knew what the situation was. But regardless, it was a blast playing Dan. He was on Mario, and I could have played it better. I think I had some things that did not go my way in regards to missing on a chart, missing on a swell that I was kind of leaning on, but I also could have played it to where I didn't lean on it. And I think that's where I could have given up a little bit too much value and could have played things a little bit differently. But then we lose another game and we're 0-2, and we're like, okay, this is where we get a couple easy games, right? We're like, we're fine. We're going to get a couple easy ones in here and just submarine our way back into some limited. And I've been practicing limited a lot. We'll take it there. That was the plan. So I'm 0-2 going into round 3. I look at my phone, Michael Fung. I'm like, okay, so it's not going to be an easy game. And I sit down across from Michael and I look to my left, and it's Pat from the Runaways on Gravy, also 0-2. I'm 0-2 on Gravy. Michael's playing Gravy 0-2. And I look to my right, and there's Brody Spurlock, 2 seats down, 0-2 on Gravy. And I was just like, okay. Mistakes were made. I don't know if we all know it yet, but I was like, the math ain't mathing is all I'm saying. And it was funny because after talking to him, we actually don't think that a mistake was made. I think there was a lot of situations Michael even admitted. Michael even admitted a couple of his games that he lost or situations that he was in, he could have played a little bit better and kind of had a better outcome and maybe not have had that rough of a start. And I obviously, like I just admitted in Dan's game, probably felt very similar. So it was not an easy recovery, right? And Michael was really ready for the mirror, and I was not. I got out-skilled. I got out-prepped, outworked, and he had a lot more tech for the mirror than I did. He had Sunken Treasure. He had scubas. He had just the works, right? And I played it really well. Did not get blown out by and it is what it is. But so it was really cool. It was really cool. And from that point on, we kind of know we know we're not going to day 2, right? So we're just vibing, we're just having a good time playing people, and we close the day out, right? Then we go into limited. We open an okay Marlin deck, nothing great, nothing bad. I run into 2 scurvs, drop 2 games, and then I got outplayed on the Marlin mirror. 100%. Just got outplayed. In fact, he went on to top 8 that calling, and right after he beat me, he basically gave me a Marlin education, essentially unlimited, that really helped me in my later games. So I don't even think I would have done as good as I did without losing to him early in the rounds. Um, I forget his name, but I appreciate that. Um, it's wild to hear all these top names in the O2 bracket, all on the same hero. It was an interesting situation. One I'm not very familiar with. No shade. I think your calling is in the booth. Enjoyed the time you were on commentary. When can we see you there again? No shade taken. No shade taken at all. I I enjoy it, if I'm being 100% honest. But I also think that what we're going to get into a little bit later, I think is kind of what might be leading to that thought process is the fact that basically I'm having to rewrite what I know about the game of Flesh and Blood. We're going to get into that in here in a minute. Just how I value certain play lines, situations, and hopefully a lot of you can kind of um, take a lot of value from it. Is my ultimate goal. But I do enjoy the commentary, 100%. I'd be more than willing to do it again. Um, but yeah, it is what it is. So that was the weekend from a Flesh and Blood perspective. Then the rest of the weekend was just spent hanging out with people, talking to people, and I appreciate all the love that everybody sent. Everybody that stopped to say, hey, it was crazy. Just sit down at the poker table, and one person says, oh, I like your videos. And then, like, you assume that nobody else at the table plays Flesh and Blood, but then everybody's like, yeah, I like your videos. I like your video. And it was really good. It was really good. But ultimately, I kind of got what I asked for when I brought. I'm going to go over exactly how I prepped. I'm going to give you 100% inside view behind the curtain so you cannot make the mistake that I made. That is the goal of this stream. I want to make sure that the mistake that I made is repeated as least as possible. So I'm going to go over the entire thing. There were several shifts, and I'm going to explain exactly what my thought process was at each moment in time, and kind of what my thought process and how it was right, maybe wrong, or how it was maybe, hindsight's 2020, right? So you have to kind of weigh a lot of these situations in that current atmosphere. So should I do that first or go through the change in Flesh and Blood? Which one makes more sense? I guess we're talking about Nats. So let's do that first. Let's actually just do that right now. Also, my Nats is first weekend of July. I need this. Okay, great. So then hopefully you learn a lot for yours. So you don't have to make the same ones. So let's walk through the thought process, okay? So obviously, let's set some context. Let's set the tone a little bit. We had very little time to prep for this event. I mean, astronomically low amounts of time. If you want to be perfectly exact, I knew my flight to Vegas was Wednesday early in the morning. So I had Taipei, the world premiere, which is when we got all the cards, was Saturday. Then we had 1 week pre-release, then Tuesday. So Saturday to Saturday is 7 days. Well, Saturday to Friday is 7 days. Then Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I had exactly 11 days to prep for this event. Blunder tier list. It's gonna give that vibe. It's gonna give that vibe for sure. So we had exactly 11. Even said in the opening speech, and that's a week earlier than it was originally slated for. I mean, it is what it is, right? But I had 11 days to prep for this entire event. And I admittedly decided very early on, I knew something was there with Gravy. the allies, the combination, the value that you could generate from the blues. It gave this MST ish kind of vibe, not to the same level. I don't want to do a one-to-one comparison because you were going to lose that every time. But you were able to run a high blue count for consistency reasons and then play your blues and get decent value, which is very hard to find in the game of Flesh and Blood. And so I saw that, and then I saw, okay, that plus the combination of board state is a dangerous combination. So I knew something was there in regards to Gravy Bone. Also, I had the benefit of playing it for the show match, which kind of gave me a couple extra reps or a couple more reasons for additional reps a little bit earlier. And so I decided pretty early, like as soon as we got the cards, I'd say within 24 hours, Gravy was at the top of my list on what I wanted to play for US National. Um, and there were a couple decks that were tempting me away from it, right? You had, of course, Florian as a safer choice, quote unquote. You had Mario as another choice. I even entertained Hatchet's Dorinthia temporarily, or just a dual wielding warrior. And so there were a couple choices that kind of swayed me a little bit. But I would say for all 11 days, Gravy was basically at the top of the list for most of it. Okay. So let me walk you through the evolution and kind of where my thought process was and where I made certain decisions. Okay. And that way you can get as much value as you possibly can from the situation. So we know we're on Gravy, or at least it's at the top of our list. Okay. Approximately 3 days in, we essentially identify that a heavy ally list is not the optimal way to play the deck. That's why I said what I said on the tier list. It's why I, any comment out of the whole joke, more allies than NATO and all of that. It was pointing at the fact that that's the first thing that we were able to identify in fairly early. And when I say not, I'm saying like a list with like 12 to 15 allies seemed optimal. That is what our conclusion came to very early. Okay. Now, if you were to ask me what my Nats list looked like, there were way more than 12 to 15 allies. Okay. I'm going to explain why. So, approximately 7 days into testing, 1 week. So, we have 11 days and we're at 7. Okay. So, we're well over halfway, just to give some relativity there. We get to a point to where I have to solve a problem. All the data analytics and stuff like that, everything is pointing to Florian being the most represented deck. Every single tool that we utilize as a team to come to the conclusion that Florian will be the most represented deck at Nats. Okay. And then we also know that Ninja will also be highly represented. Not as high, but highly represented. Okay. That's why when I placed Syndra on my tier list, I placed her a little bit higher. And when I placed her, I said that this is a bad pick for Nats, but a lot of people are going to bring it. And that's because that's what the data was indicating. Okay. So if I'm playing Gravy and I'm 100% positive that Florian will be the most represented deck, I have to be good into that matchup, or there's no reason for me to bring the deck. It's that simple. Because I did not think that at the time, I knew that the list that I was going to get to was not going to be the best deck in the room. I knew that for a fact. So I was trying to leverage unfamiliarity and people not having time to figure out sideboard slots to hate on it, which was wrong. And, a couple of other things. I was trying to leverage an advantage I was being fancy, if I'm being honest. Okay. And I got burned for it, but that's okay. And so we're 7 days in. And I say, I got to get good into flooring. So I play some flooring games. They're not going how I thought. They I'm doing the things that I believe you were supposed to be doing, kind of playing tempo, but at the same time, building the grave, putting out combinations of allies, not just allies, like Chum and Humper at the same time, things like that. I'm doing all the things that I think is the correct way to handle that matchup. And what I think should be theoretically a 75-25 matchup is seeming unfavorable in my testing with me piloting gravy. And I know for a fact that that is not accurate. Okay. But in a time limited situation, there's a very important thing that you have to understand. There is what's factually correct, and then there is what is achievable. Okay. And those are sometimes two different things. If you have all the time in the world, they can be the same thing, right? But given, you know, the time that I could allow to the game in that 11-day period, thanks to, you know, scheduling, and I had to make a choice. I pivoted the idea. I said, can I flip this matchup if I build the deck different? And I looked at it through the eyes of Dromai. I said, okay, what if Dromai, like theoretically, Big Dragon Dromai is the correct way to like Big Dragon Dromai, in my opinion, is much better into like slow, dirtily decks than say Redline Dromai. But I would also make the argument that Redline Dromai or the Big Dragon Dromai has a much larger skill check or skill floor, right? And so I said, okay, let's try the Red Dragon Dromai theoretically, right? And so I was like, okay, let's up the ally count and let's just spam the board with limpets and a bunch of other shit, right? I flipped the win rate. I took it to unfavorable to comfortably favorable by making that one change. So that puts me in a situation. There's the way that I think it should be built. I'm gonna show you all the list. I'm gonna show you how I went from this to this to this to this. All of it timestamp dated. I'm walking. It's all an open door. I'm gonna show it all. And just show you how my thought process changed. Okay. And how, you know, I had to come up with a quick solution. Um, and so that's basically how we abandoned the idea. We abandoned the idea of the optimal build of Florian because I didn't have the time to learn how to effectively handle the Florian matchup. Because in a regular gravy list, like the matchup should be fine. I just did not have the time to be able to invest into it to learn it. Simple as that. And so I told myself, I was like, okay, I can either go in there being bad into the best or the most represented deck, and also probably bad into the second most represented deck, which makes no sense, or I can at least beat the first one. And so we pivoted the game plan into the more ally-oriented build, which is what I ultimately took to Nats, which is ultimately the weaker list. And so let's go ahead and dig into that evolution. Let me walk you through kind of how that happened. So pretty early, we landed on something along these lines. mid ally, or no, this is the show match. This is not where we landed on. This was something I was just experimenting for the show match, and kind of like I wanted to show the I wanted to show the whole aspect of like throwing shit off the top and stuff like that. Because I don't know, I guess that's like how the devs intended, that kind of thing. So this is where this was like the first like revision. This was like day 3 where we were like, okay, it seems solid, right? Like not a whole lot of allies, but enough to get shit done, kind of thing. Now, there's a lot of problems with this list. This is very early, but I'm just showing you. This is where we started to grasp the idea that maybe less allies is good, is a lot better. And so let's go ahead and show the next one. So that was the first one. That was about 3 days in, give or take. Then we have what I actually like. And once again, I'm being full transparency here. We can see the dates on it. June 2nd, right? We got May 26th here, right? Like this, Pummel ultimately ended up being too fancy. I will die on that hill. I wanted to make it work so much to kind of shore up those ninja matchups, but I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. Bark ended up being okay. The whole line of pitching for a gold, and then using the extra blue to just do a 2-card 9 is insane. It's a pretty good line, but the problem with this card particularly, and really just any card without go again, presents the same problem in gravy. Any card that doesn't have go again, that's an attack, means you can't use your allies. You're literally, whatever the value may be, whatever the value proposition may be, you have to discount the opportunity. And we were on Red Swell, just like the Yuki list as well. And so this is where we started really understanding the value of go again and how it was just extremely, extremely valuable. Okay. So then comes, what's the next one? What was the next one we were at? And then here you can also see a little bit of the doubt creep in. We get the Florian deck going. You start to see the doubt creep in a little bit, but then we get the next one, and you start noticing that this one's just not being as fancy, right? Like we don't have the pummels, we don't have the red swells, or like the only red attacks we have are just go again attacks, because we realize that that's what we ultimately need to be leaning on. We recognize that fairly quickly. Now, this is a little up on the ally count, not crazy. I think we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 16 main board, which is a tad high, not crazy. Basically, if I was to go back and do it, I'd probably just cut Cuddy, no pun intended, from this list, and like that would have been a fine kind of spot. So this is kind of where the list. This was the final list before we went like giga heavy into ally to fix the Florian situation, and that pivot looked like this, which I had none of this deck is me. I'm going to get that out there right now. Basically what happened here was this was a collaboration effort between Taylor and somebody else that basically landed on this, okay? Which is a higher ally count. It is just all in on the idea of allies, okay? We ended up making a couple changes to the actual Nats list that was submitted. I think I took out these loot the arsenals and put in blue jittery bones. But like overall, this is basically what we ended up taking to Nats, which was much more ally heavy, right? And so, or also, I guess more ally heavy is not maybe not the correct way to phrase it, but also just the whole game plan is invested in allies. There's no other game plan, right? Like if you're not playing allies, you're not doing anything, which is a dangerous, cards that I'm saying that kind of give that example is like blue flying high and stuff like that, where it just furthers that game plan. Back alley break line is just dog shit unless you have multiple avenues to acquire more allies and just kind of extract that value exponentially. And so that's kind of how. a- And the one thing that I want to say is where I think I made my biggest mistake in my deck evolution process is halfway through when I had a doubt in the Florian situation. I immediately abandoned what I knew was the better version of the deck or the better idea of the deck. I should have pivoted. I should have just went to Florian, something I know how to play, something I've got a lot of reps on, something I wouldn't need a lot more time, invest, more effort into limited and shore up the difference. Knowing that Florian's not the absolute best deck, but like I can do it. I made a mistake. I should have just played Florian. And I'm being honest, I thought about it, spent a lot of time thinking about it, and I'm gonna be honest, I did not feel like finding the cards. I know that sounds like the stupidest fucking reason, but I'm telling you, that was the main motivator. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna lie to you. Um, and it's actually kind of funny. And so that's kind of the evolution of kind of how we made our decisions and how we kind of changed ideas and why we changed ideas. Why do we have four deck lists? They're all in on attacks, and then boom, the last one, more allies, right? That's kind of the thought process. I just want to be openly transparent. Just it was a mistake. It legitimately was. Not only that, but I think the ally list is actually harder to play because there's more value propositions that you have to solve on when to establish and when to not. Whereas the ones with the attacks it's much easier math to sit there and say because you're not solely dependent on extracting your value from board state. Some of it is on the physical card, which is much easier, in my opinion. Some people may disagree, but that's where I land on it. So that's ultimately what happened. Now, let me go ahead and flip the script a little bit and let's talk about how I think Flesh and Blood is changing. And I don't mean it in a bad way. Um, Hopefully, they're changing the way they do scheduling, but that's a sidebar. I just had to throw some shade. Um, but I want to talk about something that I've known about Flesh and Blood for a long time, but I've been resistant on applying the correct amount of weight to it, and I'm not sure why. Because I'm very, very familiar with the concept, and that is the idea of implied value. For those of you who don't know, implied value is essentially taking a game action or doing something, and the value that you extract is not face up. It's not it, if you attack for Raging Onslaught for 7, right? That's a 2-card 7. There's no implied value. There's no on hit effect. There's nothing. But a Leave No Witness played for 4 with an on hit has a ton of implied value. I'll break it down for you to make it even more simpler so everybody can understand it, whether you're new to the game or not. Let's just assume that you're playing against a Syndra and every single card in their hand is a head jab. Head jab is a 0 cost, 3 attack, 2 block card with go again. Let's just assume every card in their hand is just the same thing, same text, everything. And they also have one in Arsenal. Okay? So a head jab extracts 1 more value when it attacks than if it blocks. Because you can go 3 go again or you can block for 2. And when you play Leave No Witness, it threatens a value of a 1-card 7 because if it blows up the arsenal, then that's 3 damage that isn't coming your way the next turn. That's very simple implied value math. But where it gets a little bit more complicated, and not so much in this example because I literally just stripped it of all of its complexity. If you persuade that Syndra player to lay down 2 head jabs to block your leave no witness, which would be the correct line in that situation mathematically, unless the life totals were low and you were trying to just get a tempo kind of foot stance, if you will. If they block with 2 head jabs, they gave up 6 value to extract 4 because they could have attacked for 6, but instead they blocked for 4, which means that leave no witness had a strict value of 4 with an implied value of 2. That 2 is derived from the difference in what you forced your opponent to do. Now, 1 card 6, really good, right? It gets a lot more complicated than that. I just basically just created the most simplest version ever, just so everybody could understand what I'm talking about. And there's also a lot of aspects that sometimes the implied value is not derived strictly from the card, but it could also be from a macro strategy or a micro strategy within a macro strategy. This could be playing a slow tempo based game plan against Vincent. When they trip up, you hit the gas, right? And that's kind of like a micro strategy within a macro. And so, what I want to say is anybody that's been playing this game for more than 3 years, we went through a long period. I would say basically anything that was like after Monarch or Tails, we'll use Tails. After Tails and before MST, that entire period of Flesh and Blood could be simplified to yes, there's always been implied value in the game, but the weight that it carried in its analysis was so much smaller to where I'll give you the best example is the heavy hitters meta, where everybody was just trying this mid range game plan. People literally referred to it as a spreadsheet simulator because everybody was just looking at their hand and saying, what is the best numerical number I can come up with based on the face value of the cards? That is how the game was played. I was really good at that. I designed an entire deck idea around that. The Beefy Briar, the Fatigue Briar. I brought that to the Goliath Gauntlet. Um, and, I was fascinated in that aspect of the game. And I was really good at attacking. I was one of the early adopters for the first dual wielding hatchet Dory. I'm not gonna say I was the first, but I was playing it before heavy hitters. I'll put it that way. Um, so the whole dynamic of coming up with macro strategies that extract high amounts of value, I was very good at. I was very good at it. And the problem when MST dropped, the game changed. The game in its entirety just fundamentally changed. And I fought it. I resisted it. Rosetta came out, did the same thing. I uh, just looked at the face value math a little bit too much, just to put it plain and simple. And it's not changing. High Seas coming out kind of exacerbates it a little bit even more. And it seems to be the direction the game is going. Should you be able to look at your hand and extract the most amount of numerical value as possible based on the face values of the cards? Yes. But it's not the only way the game should be played. And it's not the only way I was playing the game. I knew about macro strategies. I knew about how to weigh on hits and I knew when to apply pressure and things like that. But there were too many times in my game I'm not talking to a particular game, just in my game as a player, that I got too comfortable just taking the highest numerical line. It was a flaw in my game for probably um geez, probably the better half of last year up to now, and I'm going to do everything in my power to fix it. Because I've come to that realization. And I also want to preface that this change in the game, I don't want to even entertain the idea of that this is a bad thing. This is oh, flesh and blood's not like the good old days, like not at all. I think that higher focus on implied value increases interaction. And anytime there's more interaction, the game's better. Period. Any Ask any Yu-Gi-Oh player how much fun they have getting locked out on turn 0, right? It's not interactive, it's not fun, right? It's cool when you're doing it, when you're winning, but if you just watch somebody do it, it's the worst thing on the planet. And I didn't weigh it enough, plain and simple. Just tuned in, what is changing? So we're basically talking about how for the longest period of time, I overvalued the numerical values on cards and did not weigh heavily enough the implied value of cards, or implied value of cards and macro micro situations. And the part I thought about this I started thinking about this whole scenario kind of like after mine and Dan's game, and it kind of stuck with me all the way home. To be honest, on the plane ride, and even thought about it a little bit while I was playing poker, and because that's just second nature. And to be 100% honest, I was kind of disappointed in myself a little bit because I have a really big history of playing poker, and that's one of the first things you learn is implied value and how important it is. And when I finally identified what the weakness was in my game, I was like, damn, how did I let that get away? Right. And I just, you know, I was a little disappointed, to be honest. But I found it. I found it, and I'm going to fix it. And we're going to figure out how we're going to do that. Um, I don't know how I'm going to make content around it, but when I figure out how I'm going to do that, I'm going to share it with you, of course. Nothing's a secret. I just got to figure it out first. But once I figure it out, I'm more than happy to share it. And I'm going to break down exactly what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, all of that stuff. But this is a hole in my game that I gotta fix. I gotta fix it. Not gonna run from it. I'm gonna scream it from the rooftops, literally on stream. Saying, "Hey, yeah, this dude's fucking up." Um, I'm just gonna fix it. I'm gonna fix it, and we're gonna get better. And what would be an example of implied value? So, if you go back, I actually made the perfect example, in my opinion, of like leave no witness and head jabs and stuff like that. It was about 15 minutes back, but it's a great example of implied value. And I love this topic and your willingness to share. I'll be honest, it was a little tough because when you have a bad weekend in card tournaments, the last thing you kind of want to do is talk about it. I'll be honest. When I first kind of made the discovery and kind of like reflected on it and kind of like did some some thinking on kind of where things went wrong. I didn't really want to talk about it, but I remembered one thing. This I don't have this infinite amount of TCG experience. For those of you who don't know, this is my first TCG. Period. We hit the ground running, I'd like to say. But I don't have 5 years of Magic under my belt. I have a little bit of kitchen table Yu-Gi-Oh under my belt. That's my TCG experience. And so it's been a little bit of a journey, to say the least, and kind of um I'm having to shore up some holes, basically, in my game, that a lot of people just like. You have a lot of those players, like we're starting to see them come from like Runeterra and stuff like that. Like Majin's a good example. Congrats on your win, by the way. That's fucking awesome. Had a blast playing poker with him literally right after on Sunday night. It was a blast. Had a good time. Um and you know, they take all those lessons that they learned, and then they come over and they just learn mechanics and then kind of take it from there, and they're kind of building onto something instead of starting fresh. And so we're starting fresh, or we did at least 4 years ago when we started playing this game. But yeah, I just wanted to share that, because when I started this game, I didn't know up from down. I didn't know TCGs. I didn't know, hell, I didn't find out till 2 years in that you could even ask a judge for slow play. Like I was oblivious to this whole system, this whole situation. But I found people. I'll never forget it. Uh, the person who I give credit to teaching me the basics of the game, um, is he ran a YouTube channel called Tower Number 9. His name was Davis Kingsley. And he just did these simple Dorinthia, you know, simple Dorinthia, just gameplay. And it just opened my eyes because he was willing to share it and explain it in a way to where I could grasp way more knowledge about the subject than a normal timeline would allow, which allowed me to get better a lot quicker. And that's just what I'm trying to do here. Simple as that. It's just kind of give that pathway for people to just learn for free for a couple minutes of their time, whatever the case may be, however long they decide to watch, and just get those nuggets so they don't have to lose a match that, makes them bubble, and, they don't have to learn the lesson that way. So that's one thing. The only one to beat me in a Dawnblade Mirror in official match. Wonder where Tower Number 9 is now. I don't know. I don't think he's playing, but yeah, that was. And then, of course, after Josh just happens to be in chat, but after Tower Number 9 taught me the game, I ran into Josh at an RTN in Podunk, Tennessee, and he very quickly made me realize that I didn't know that much about the game. so there are kind of two phases to that equation, right? But like it was intense too, because I even remember this was actually like a little highlight of mine. I just told that story of like how I kind of learned the game from him, and it was funny because back when COVID happened, which was when I started playing the game, the first 2 seasons of skirmishes, we all played it online. We did webcam game skirmishes, literally. And so I joined this skirmish for some LGS that's in like Oregon or some shit. Like the Fabled Hobby, I think was the name of the store. It was like never even thought about this store before, never been there, nothing. They were just like, sign up. And it was like a 300 person skirmish. 300 person, because it was all online and everybody got paired and shit. Like it was wild. In round 4 of that skirmish, look at my phone. It said Davis Kingsley. I got to play him. I remember I turned on the webcam. I was like, all right, we got to play it cool. We got to play it cool. It was like the funniest shit. But it was cool. It was like, man, like the person who taught me the game, I get to like try and get him. I did not. He got me because he was on Chain and I was on Don Blade Dory. And that was before we realized how good Chain was. And he happened to know that a little bit earlier than the rest of us. So it did him really well. But yeah, it was man, those were the good old days, Kyle. I'll tell you what. Those skirmishes in Georgia. That's how me and Kyle met. I got him because he drew a bunch of reds. And he said, all right, I'll see you in the final. And then I lost to some Hanabi blaster dash bullshit. And he beat it in the finals. Oh, it was too good. It was too good. Art of War fucking Hanabi blaster dash, bro. It was the wildest shit on the planet. But I got cooked. I got cooked by Max V. Oh, yeah. Still need that salty run back. I tell you what. It's good stuff. But yeah. I had no intentions of making the stream today extremely long. I just wanted to kind of get that message out there, kind of explain my thought process. Hopefully somebody learns something. I will take a little while. If you have any questions, things you want to talk about, I'm sorry. I know I missed some while I was kind of talking because I was like in the tank. But if you have any questions, anything you want to talk about, anything like that, throw it in chat right now. I would love to discuss it. It can be regarding what we talked about. It can be metagame stuff, your nats, whatever you want. More than happy to discuss it, talk about it. Just throw it in chat now, and I'd love to get to it. But I do intend on this being a little bit of a shorter stream. We'll probably go another, 15, 20 minutes, depending on how long the questions dry up, if you will. You have any good gravy tips now after Nats? Yes, and that is you have to be very good at understanding up. We just talked about it, the implied value of your allies. That is where I think I made my biggest mistakes is I looked at the numerical value of that turn cycle, but I was not factoring, like there were too many times where I was like, okay, I can swing Mortis for 6. That's cool. And then like I knew he would have to clear it, but I undervalued the amount of tempo I would get from him clearing it, which would allow me to establish the next one, and how that can be an almost infinite cycle if I draw hands correctly. I also undervalued gold generation. I'm being 100% honest. Gold is wild, absolutely wild in gravy. Are you excited to cast Hong Kong Nats in 2.5 weeks? Well, I had no idea, but I guess we'll do it. Josh. I don't know. I guess at this point we should just assume it, right? It seems rude, but yeah. Of course, I'm always down. But yeah, so the implied value behind the allies, also less allies, still better. NATO joke is still good. Okay. And so like that sweet spot is kind of 12 to 15. One more thing I would tell you with gravy. If you have an attack action card in your deck and it does not have go again, seriously ask yourself, what is it doing there? I'm going as far as questioning the validity of CNC. Okay? Sounds crazy. And maybe the basis of that questioning is that it's a sideboard card, not necessarily a main deck card. But us as Flesh and Blood players, we see CNC, $120 card, staple, throw it in, ask questions later. Well, now we're asking questions. And every single attack that does not have go again, I am looking at that card and saying, what do you provide this deck? Because if you play a blue, you play an ally, and you play an attack, guess what? You didn't swing with your ally. It's not that great. It's that simple. Do you think there's possibly too much disruption in Fab? It's actually an interesting question, to be honest. Is there too much disruption in Fab? Okay. Well, we can delineate that disruption equals interaction. Okay. If nobody has disruption, you very easily can dissolve to that game state of, well, naturally you would dissolve to the game state of you just slap each other till one of you falls over, unless somebody's strategy is heavily involving blocking. Fair statement. So ultimately, the question is too much interaction bad? No. I could see too many game actions being bad because it becomes tedious, but too much interaction I don't believe is bad. I think where the line is drawn and where you might be getting at is there's cards in the game like, well, not anymore. Siren's Call, for example, where if you play around the card, you're fucked. If you don't play around the card, guess what? You're fucked, right? So is too much disruption bad in Fab? No. But getting fucked too much in Fab is probably not advantageous. So I think it's not the amount of disruption. I think the thing that we should question is what kind of disruption. That's the important. Man was my idol when I was learning Fab, as well as Yuki, of course. Of course, Yuki is hella good. And I love that she dropped that list article. That was really good. That was really good. To everyone watching, we posted. Yep, we did the primers, all that stuff, bro. Sam has been cooking in the lab, bro. Just writing them up. I mean, the dude is a savage at them. Lot of detail, everything explained. It's actually insane how much work he puts into those. Just absolutely wild. What's your opinion on Jarl for PT? I think if he's bad, who would your next similar picks be? So let's go ahead and talk about Guardian, because I think that's ultimately where you're getting at. And we have Guardian Mastery Pack. When is that shit coming out? It's like soon, right? Guardian Mastery Pack. When's that shit come out? It's like soon. Like soon, right? August 8th. Oh, it ain't that soon. Okay. So with what we know, I think that Guardian decks still suck at the game. And it's because of their average rate. So what made Guardian so good previously was they had a consistent blue base and impactful attacks. Now we have decks that have twice as good as a blue base, Gravy, any MST hero, right? Assassins with bonds, crazy shit like that. Way better resource base. and cards that just have to connect. They don't need to do 4 damage. They don't need to dominate if it's a Tuesday past 6 p.m. None of that shit. Just if it hits, it fucks them up, right? So you just have to ask yourself, why would I play that? I get more armor. Cool. They get codex. Just saying, right? Like if you're gonna make one of those trades, make the right one. The math simply isn't there, is what I'm saying. Now, Jarl is the only one that can break that equation. Give you a little glimmer of hope. I'm not trying to just doom on it. Him being able to break Compass for Gravy is very, it needs to happen early, but like it's very solid. If everybody kind of devolves to a very clean type of resource curve, which should happen because that's optimal deck building. But more importantly, if the lack of Jarl's relevancy will depend on the amount of value loss if you go outside curve. If that number goes up, right, then he's really good. If it goes down, he's going to be pretty bad. So he has hope. I think he's a solid pick. I think he's a way better pick for Singapore than he is for national season. I'll admit that. But it really Azalea needs to go. It's not an ideal situation there. You would think it is, but it's really not. And the assassins are giving him a hard time. He lost one, but Mario is still going to be running around. So it is what it is. Let's see. Let me get caught up in chat. So I hope I answered your question. Hope I answered it. What do you think about Prism? I think Prism's perfectly fine. I think she's really solid. Florian goes away. Isn't she a candidate for the strongest deck? She very well could be. Solid into Verdance. Verdance is kind of like the biggest target right now, in my opinion. Not just because of the win, but I'm currently trying to figure out what beats it. And there's a couple things like Dio. There's Prism's pretty good into it, but it's not like Giga favored like Wizard into Prism used to be. So I think Prism's great. I think Prism's a phenomenal pick if you can play it. What do you think the biggest impact of new LLing is? Surprisingly, I'm going to go against the grain here and not say anything involving Guardian. I still think that Guardian is like, okay, you can play Blue Thunderquake. Congratulations. It's still a shit card. It was good in 2022, but right now, like, it's just ass. Nobody gives a fuck if you're swinging 8 with 3 blue cards. Nobody gives a shit. Literally nobody. So playing those cards just don't matter. They literally just don't matter. What's the biggest impact for new leaving? What was new picking on? Let me pull up a hero list to answer that question. I think it's a really good question. Who's the winner? Mech. Any mech. Huge winner. That's the answer that I was looking for. Holy shit. I don't know why that took so long. Any mech is a huge winner for new getting the fuck out of the format. That is my final answer. I don't know why it took so long to think about that. Let me keep going in chat. As a combo Bolton lover, yes, way too much. Oh, there's that too. I guess I had Assassin in mind when I asked. I used to play the class, and it super feels bad at times to play again. Of course it does. And that, I think that has to do with bonds allowing you to dig through somebody's deck is wild. That's just wild. I don't know what the thought process was on that one, but that's just diabolical. Like you searching it through my deck? Not. I don't care that much, but like I've heard a lot of people voice the fact that they just don't like the vibes of that interaction, and I understand it. I'm like on board with it. I personally don't give a shit, but I understand it. Do, 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 do. I feel like the too much disruption question comes from a player who is frustrated when they are playing against an assassin. Of course it is. Of course it is. Gonna do a full box sealed at Gen Con. Get it a week early. That's pretty hype. You can get your reprinted premeditate. Gonna I think new was too much disruption, to be honest. It could be. It does feel very like got you in a corner kind of situation. Um I'm new I'm new to the game, no pun intended. So this is super insightful. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Hope you had a good time. To be fair, Assassin is frustrating class to play against if you don't draw D reacts. And you just have to know, right? It's like super punishing if you don't know what you're doing. Um, this is why Nathan hates Azuri. He doesn't understand EV and the power of bluffing. Well, I know the power of bluffing. I watched firsthand in Vegas. Nathan knows about bluffing. Just sad it was versus Trips. Look, we're not gonna talk about that part, okay? Well, I had two good bluffs in Vegas. One of them ran into quads, and the other one ran into a set. Oh, it was not good. It was not good. But we did good on the weekend in poker. We were, oh my god, I had to get a forklift to get my chips out on Saturday. We were stacking them up. I tell you what. It was good though. I had a blast just talking shit half the time. Oh man, there was the Asian guy that kept saying, "Call, you're ahead. Call, you're ahead," and then he would just fold. It was such a good. That's like the best fab. Going to Vegas, it's like just hanging out with it because like when you're on a team, right? You got to hang with the team. Like you got to, right? It's the team, right? So you go to like Chicago or something. It's like, okay, you you go to dinner with the team or whatever after you play for the day or whatever, and there's like, I guess I just need to play Clock Tower with Pat. I need to give in and just go. I just need to like carve out time and make it happen because like I feel like that's where the fun shit is. It's just like hanging out with everybody. Dog shit tired afterwards. I tell you, Pat, if you see this, I'm guaranteeing that the next time at an event, and I can physically put myself in that seat, I'm playing Blood in the Clock Tower or whatever the fuck it's called. I'm gonna play it. I think Guardian was good when mini decks looked alike. You could build a Guardian in a way that deals with 90% of the meta. Right now, you have to choose what you want to lose to and win to. I agree. And the math is bad. What's your Mario Kart main? Oh, that's a tough one. I'm like it's funny because back when so like when I was a kid, like we're talking Nintendo 64, like elementary school, it was Bowser all day. All day Bowser. Okay. Then I got into like Smash Bros. When I was a little bit older on the GameCube, right? Like we started playing Smash Bros. And I was all about Donkey Kong, right? So then if I ever played Mario Kart, I was Donkey Kong, right? But like after that, I'd say I went through like a Luigi phase, got the player two energy, you know what I'm saying? So I would say the most recent evolution of Mario Kart main would probably have to be probably Luigi. Um, but went through a Bowser and DK phase. feel like I saw something on Twitter with you being cool with Diamond Amulet being $100 Majestic. Can you give deeper explanation why I think it's absolutely wrong? So yes, let me explain. Well, I guess let me clarify. I wasn't cool with it. I was just saying it mathematically made sense. Okay, let me explain. Okay, so theoretically, the comparison on Twitter was Shelter the Storm, $100 card. Diamond Amulet, $100 card. Okay. Well, the question they were asking is why is a card that you only need one of, and it quote unquote be a staple for a deck, be the same as the other staple that you need three of? That's a valid point, a valid question. But the answer to that question is the Diamond Amulet is short printed on purpose because you only need one for your deck. Okay. Now, I know for a fact, I have heard somebody from LSS say that legendary cards are printed less. I can say with 100% certainty. I don't know who it was. I don't know when it was, but my memory is really good and I can guarantee that statement. What I cannot guarantee is that I think I heard them say that it was at exactly the ratio of 1/3, right? Because you only need one for a play set versus three. So you print 33% of what you would print on Shelter, right? And if that is true, then the injection into the market is equal, right? So the question becomes, from a pricing standpoint, the only time you have a financial imbalance is you didn't know you were getting a finance seminar, did you? This one's sponsored by Stackswell. No, I'm just kidding. But if you have two being injected into the market, the question now becomes, is the number of gravy players equal to the number of decks that play 3 copies of Shelter the Storm? If the answer is yes, then both should be $100 based on supply and demand. However, if that's not the case, then there is an imbalance. Does that make sense? Because you have a third. If you have 1,000 Shelter the Storms, that means 333 players can get a play set. But if Diamond is printed at a third, which is 333, guess what? 333 players also have a play set of Diamond Amulet. So the play set is equal. That's the idea. Okay. Hope that cleared it up. Yeah, Pat from the Runaways, 100%. They should come out for the 10K in Pittsburgh. Oh, man, but we're already going to be in Philly for Worlds. It is a 10K, though. Yeah, I do like some 10Ks. Peach or Daisy from Mario Kart in World. I can't even remember the last Mario Kart game I played. I'm going to keep it real. Well, I played with the daughter, so it'd be whatever one came with the Switch back in the day. That's the one that I played. Was that number 8? God damn, there's a lot of them. Side note, Mario Party used to be the shit. Okay, that was my game. Mario Party? I was way more of a Mario Party fan than a Mario Kart. Just putting that out there. Just caught up. Question about implied value. Do you get implied value from deck choice? For example, do we count the value gained by having? Of course you do. And that's a great question. A great question. And not only that, but you can gain implied value from macro strategy, right? So let's say you have your hero's Dory and everybody's playing Dawnblade Dory and you flip over hatchets. You, just by the image of the meta, have gained value because they have either put in D reacts, which isn't going to do shit for them against hatchets, or they did, whatever the case may be, right? And so you can even gain implied value by an element of surprise is also how it's kind of worded. But yeah, there's so many different ways that you can, and AB is a great example. It was actually one of the reasons that Florian was literally busted with scepters because you were punished either way. Either you brought the AB and then that's less armor and you die to failings, or you know you have or you don't have the AB and you get sceptered to death, right? And they can literally make that choice in the same 60 cards. It's actually fucked. So yes, great question. Great question. Oh God, Josh, is that your picks as well, Josh? Of course it is. For those of you who don't know, anytime Josh and I compare something that involves a choice we make, it's always the same. We use the same tool brand. We keep saying we're going to make a list, but it's like scary how common it is. Like literally everything, food choices, what we like, what we don't like, and just literally everything. It's all the same. It's actually wild. I believe it was put out when they gave numbers for how much of each majestic is printed, but yes, legendaries are printed lit. I want to say the 1/3, if it exists, came in regards to when they were discussing the legendary dragons in Uprising. That was the first time they actually leaned on the legendary word. Gorg Tome was technically the first card, but nobody's asking that fucking question for one card, right? Whereas, Uprising, it's basically in full effect. My 7-year-old legit beat me on Switch Mario Kart 8. Don't say that out loud. Mine came close. I got a 7-year-old as well. My friend and I argue so much when we play Mario Party, but it's worth it. It's worth it. I'm telling you. Do you think Florian would be better positioned if he had Germinate? That's a great question. And I don't think I mean, yes, in a standpoint of like he has another 3-block blue. That's Earth. Like, yes, that is a strict upgrade across the board, no matter how you put it. Is it going to drastically change anything? I don't think there's not many decks. And I predicted this in the tier list. I said that the meta was going to speed up. I said that we were going from this dirtly bullshit to we weren't going to go to an aggro meta, but we were going to increase in speed. I wasn't able to identify exactly how much, but I just knew that the games were not going to be going that long. And so the value of Germinate is just it's there. It's good. But is it going to like change his matchup spread? I don't think it will. The only thing that would change that statement is if some like Giga Fatigue shit just came out of the window, or some like really slower deck that just grinds you out, or whatever the case may be. And the only deck that is even capable of probably doing that and standing a chance is probably Verdance. And we saw at Nats what happens in the Rules of Flesh and Blood, which I'm very curious how they solved that problem. Because we saw in the top 8 that match between Majin and the Florian, where it was literally a stalemate if both players played game theory optimal. And the rules basically said, yeah, Majin, you got it, because that's how they're written in that situation. And it's interesting. It puts LSS in an interesting spot. And the best part about it was, if you're a routine viewer of the stream, I mentioned that exact interaction and situation 1 month ago. 1 month ago, exactly before Nats, I said on stream, I said, somebody that plays Verdance, explain to me how you beat me playing Florian. And they were like, oh, well, this and this and this and this. I said, no, 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 no. No. I said, how do you beat me? I can think of 100 reasons on why I can't win, on why we draw. But how do you get my life to 0? And chat got real quiet. And I brought up that exact situation, that the game theory optimal thing to do in that situation is fucking nothing. And you just sit there and pass turn. And it's actually the best thing that both players can do. And so you have to it's an interesting spot for LSS because it's not good. It's not what you want in a game. You don't want that to be because from a theoretical standpoint, now that information is widely out there, right? It was kind of sort of out there, but now it's like wildly out there. And that guy in top 8 watched your stream and came to that conclusion, by the way. Like, do you know him and do you know him and like you're actually confirming that, or are you speculating? Because if you know that like for 100% sure, then like that's fucking sick. That is like, that's fucking wicked. But like that's not an ideal game state for anybody, because theoretically now any Verdance players, because of the rule set, they know that they can just walk into a game and just never lose. Like, it's actually the first ever 100-0 matchup ever in the history of Flesh and Blood. It is you're confirming. That is insane. That is wild. That he saw the stream and was like, yeah, I ain't doing shit. That is wild. Oh, that's so cool. That is so cool. I appreciate you sharing that with me. That is sick. I'm not making this shit up. I'm not lying. I'm telling you, I called it a month before. I was like, bro, just don't do nothing. Don't do nothing. That's so crazy. So LSS is actually, it's a tough spot. And I actually talked a little bit to Brian at the venue about the situation. I'm not going to share the details of the conversation because I don't want to leave anything up to interpretation. But it's an interesting spot. It's one that, you know, obviously there's nothing that they can do in national seasons. That would be like Wild West territory. So basically, I don't know. They're gonna have to come up with a solution, whether it be a rule change, get rid of Reaping Blade because it's like the theoretical root of the problem, but I don't know if that's like the solution. It's a weird reason to ban a card, but like I get it from a design perspective. It's basically going to come down to, do they want to play around this situation in the future? And if the answer is yes, then they can just easily ban the card and handle it later down the road. If the answer is no, they solve it now, and then Reaping Blade can just stay because they have a fundamental change to the rule set that allows, and I actually gave it some thought. I actually used it as a thought-provoking kind of exercise on like, how could you fix that? And I actually came up with, maybe it's a good idea, maybe it's bad, but the idea that I came up with was a change to the rules, and what it would incorporate is that if both players did not make a game action that impacts the board state. Now, that would have to be defined very specifically in the rules, that statement. For 3 turns each, then the game enters a state of wither. Like the assassin card wither, the one that generates frailty. And each player gets a wither token. And judges would supply these just like IP tokens, essentially. And basically, what happens is there's two ways you could do it. You could have it fixed at 1 damage at the end of every turn cycle. Everybody takes 1 damage. Or you could have it scale up at the end of every turn cycle. You put a die on it and it rolls it up to 2 and then 3 and then 4 and whatever. And they just take damage until somebody dies. The interesting part about if you did something along that line is that, okay, well, now you have a situation of who is going to lose if you both tick down to 0 at the same time. But what's interesting about that theoretical solution is it would create like this. I'm trying to look at it from a spectator view because that's ultimately the problem. It would create like the second mini game of like, okay, it can tick down 2 times and then I got to make a push. So let me like set up and do this and do that. And you can game that in like a whole different way from like a skill perspective, right? Like you can be like, oh, he's trying to set something up. Let me save my CNC for when the wither token hits 3, so that way he can't push back on 4, and then we both die at 5, and then do the rules. This happens, right? Like it creates like this fun little mini game, but more importantly, it forces a conclusion to the game, which is ultimately the goal. So that was just like a little thought exercise that I had of like maybe it's pretty out there, right? Like it's a drastic change to the rule set, but like I don't know, maybe it's just an idea. Um, but yeah, why ban Reaping Blade though? If 95% favored deck is already favored, how does a ban do anything but give them the extra 5%? That's actually a really good question. And the answer to that is to preserve the integrity of viewership. I think that actually, I know for a fact that LSS, from a company perspective, before they brought on Ethan, and even the beginning stages of when they brought on Ethan, they severely underestimated the importance of coverage and the quality thereof and the entertainment value that it brings and how important it is for the game to grow. And I was a huge advocate on Twitter, on everything, just stressing how important this shit is. And I would mention like there was some tweet where like I'm not gonna name a name, but somebody thought about a Raiden for 0 block for literally 7 minutes. And I broke down on Twitter how that's like very bad for the game. Because if you have anybody, imagine you don't play Flesh and Blood and you turn on the stream, because let's face it, that is the high, other than a direct marketing campaign, that is the highest probability of acquiring a new player other than just player to player connection, right? That is the most forced way to acquire new players, if that's the correct way to say it. Non-natural. I don't know, however you want to put it. Is them seeing the stream and being exposed to it and them, doing all of that. And if they hop on to that stream and watch somebody think for 7 minutes on a block for 0 when they're 30 life up, they're not going to continue to watch that stream. Therefore, they're not going to learn about the game. They're not going to learn about a mechanic that could pique their interest or anything like that. Now, let's apply it to this situation. You tune into Top 8 Nats, and they're sitting there in a judge call for 20 minutes because nobody's taking a game action. From a view, if I was interested in exploring Flesh and Blood because I played Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic or One Piece or whatever the case may be, and I was just interested in the game, and that happened the first time I was. I'm not talking about me walking straight into it. Let's say I watched the whole fucking stream. That would make me question it. That would make me question it, right? Whether I would want to invest my time, money, and energy into the game if I saw something like that. So I think you just have to fix it from a viewership perspective. And it creates just this, you don't ever want to have a legit 100-0 matchup. Maybe ban the card that lets Wizard 100-0 someone in a single turn instead of Reaping Blade, though. Both accomplish the same. I mean, you're right. You're 100% right. Like, that would be an addict. If you, I guess it would be. I guess ultimately what you would do is you would take down Surging Aethertide, right? Because that's the bigger scaling factor rather than rampant growth. I think you could probably take away Surging Aethertide and leave rampant growth and still leave Verdance with like a mini combo. But you can still tech for it and like survive it if you really like, try to Giga Juice. When I was getting into MTG, I loved watching games because I felt I was there. But then seeing non-games was very boring. That thought remained with me when I switched to Fab. Yep. And so getting Exodiad isn't good for the game either. Yeah, I mean, you both of you are 100% right. Like maybe that's the better solution. Is attacking it from a different angle. Ultimately what it comes down to, your solution is better in the immediate, right? Because it's more of like two problems in one. You're fixing a balance issue, and then you're also fixing an interaction. The argument for Reaping Blade is this going to come up again? Because if you ever create another life gain hero, guess what? We're having this conversation again. So really, it ultimately is going to come down to, is there an easy rule change that they can make? I doubt. It's a very complex situation, very difficult. But I mean, they got the best of the best working for them, so maybe they could figure something out. And if they want to play around Reaping Blade in the future, they'll go with something probably closer to your idea. If they don't want to do that, then Reaping Blade's probably got to go. But on the surface, getting rid of the Verdance card would be the better solution. I agree. 100%. Well, all right. I kind of mentioned that this was going to be a little bit of a shorter stream, and here we are. So I just wanted to kind of share my thoughts and kind of my preparation for nationals and kind of what went right, what went wrong. And I think we need some 3 floating style games, but like pro versus pro, like MTG Vintage Super League, but for Fab. Um, it's interesting, right? The closest thing that you could compare to that, I guess, would be ours in Blue Pitch's show match. At the beginning of every set, we play a series of games, and that's like good players, new decks, just going at it, right? And it's fun. Everybody enjoys it. Gets a ton of viewership. A lot of people look forward to it. It's very, very successful. So that's like the closest comparison. So I would assume that you're right. The problem is, and this is a very unfortunate reality. Anybody that is considering themselves a professional player or somebody that's hyper competitive for the game, the most advantageous thing that they can do for their gameplay career is not make content. That's the absolute, just the honest truth. If you wanted to just go balls to the walls and just be as hyper competitive as possible, I think that would probably be the optimal way to do it. Every time you're making anytime the camera's on or you're editing videos or stuff like that, you'd be testing, right? It's time diverted. It's a distraction. Um, and there's also the if you anytime you go pro versus pro, are people holding back? Are they justified in doing so? Is there an underlying reason? Does it then become this? Does it dissolve to this kind of pro versus pro, but everybody's playing Project Blue decks because nobody wants to spill anything, right? It's complicated, and it's very hard to navigate, especially being on this side of the equation. I'm kind of an exception because kind of I've built 99% of my brand on just being open with everything that I know. I don't I'll never share anything that jeopardizes somebody that that jeopardizes something that somebody told me. If anybody gave me advice or helped me with a deck or something like that, I would always ask them to share uh, before a competitive event that we were practicing for, or whatever the case may be. I would never just willy nilly give that information out. Much like when we got to the tier list, I said, I can't say why this is better, but it is what it is. And yeah, it's a complex equation, but I agree with you 100%. If you did pro versus pro games and people were having a good time, and the tough part is like you also have to have certain personalities. All right. I'm not gonna name any names. I'm not gonna say I'm just saying 3 floating games are entertaining as shit because those people are amazing at what they do. And if you have pro players that do not have those personalities and that expertise and those jokes and that entertainment value, well, it becomes a completely different product. It's just two good players testing, and now nobody's watching it for entertainment, but they're watching it to learn, right? It's very difficult to bridge that gap between entertainment and just value on like a um I mean that's kind of where I've tried to find my lane is that perfect balance of some entertainment, some value, trying to go back and forth, but it's tough. It's an interesting dynamic, complex equation that a lot of people I think once you get on this side of it, you realize it very quickly. But it is what it is. And I don't fault anybody for thinking that way. Like I used to think the same thing. Like, why not? Um, but it's interesting for sure. 1,000%. You do well. And I appreciate it. Thank you so much. On that note, I think we're gonna close it out. I want to thank everybody for joining me. I know everybody in the US, we're still recovering from a crazy week, and there's not anything for us for quite some time. So thank you for joining me. Um, if you're catching the VOD, I got a couple weeks, while Nat season is going on. I have a couple weeks where I don't really have anything in the books. If there's anything in particular you're looking for on what you want me to cover, talk about, discuss, do, whatever the case may be, throw it in chat now. Leave a comment on the VOD. Just let me know what you're looking for. Do we need to revisit some gameplay vids because it's been a while, right? Uh, it's been a while since I've just literally just played some games on stream. I feel like I talk more than I play now. Um, so yeah, we'll just let me know what you're looking for in the next couple weeks. I'm more than happy to placate what people want to see, want to do, because it is kind of for the U.S. specifically. It's a down season from this point on, if I'm not mistaken. I know we got Kansas coming up, but that's about it. The rest of it is it Kansas or Missouri? I don't know, one of those. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and call it. Thanks to everybody for being here. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, if you saw me in Vegas and you said something, I appreciate it so much. And if you didn't, that's okay. Just say something next time. I promise. I'm as friendly as I can be. Sometimes I get giga focused on something and it's very hard to break my attention. And I apologize. First time I met Taylor, I did that. He was like, "Man, I'm a big Briar fan too." And I was like, "Cool, cool, cool." Because I was like thinking over lines in a previous game. And I just completely blew him off and I felt so horrible. But it is what it is. Um, so yeah, if I ever do that, it's never intentional. I'm just like, if I get focused on something, I'm like in there. It's hard to break the attention. But thanks everybody for joining me. Really do appreciate it. I will see everybody next week for something. I don't know what it's going to be, but we'll figure it out. Take care, everybody.